Path of Exile 2 just released for all platforms in early access, and I've been playing a good amount of it with my friends, and I wanted to bring you guys a review and my thoughts of it so far. Now, before I do this early access review, I want to remind you guys of a few things. I don't like early access, I don't like live service games, and I don't like free-to-play games. So why did I start playing this? Well, my friends told me the new combat system in this game, the character building and RPG elements are just an absolute blast. So I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. And especially because I never played the first Path of Exile and I could never get into Diablo, I'm generally not a fan of just camera view in action games or RPGs. The top camera view where you're looking at your character from above. I generally like it behind the character, especially with action combat. And in general, I play a lot of JRPGs, right? This artistic aesthetic style is not usually one I'll play unless it's like Dark Souls or something like that. And I usually stay far away from early access or live service games or free-to-play games for a few reasons. The biggest one is if it's mostly online in the deep future, the devs could turn off the servers and you'll never get to play it again, as long as they don't make an offline version. So that always drives me crazy. I like to have my old save datas. I like to get to a final boss and see credits. I love my physical games, right? And then comes the whole microtransaction deal, and while that's fine if it's just skins, I like to unlock things in my games, right? I don't like to pay for skins or any of these things, so I ended up playing it because my good friend Galactic Buffin, who also has a really cool YouTube channel, please go check it out for me, he gave me a key for this game because anyone who played a bunch of the first Path of Exile got some keys to give to their friends, because it's actually $30 for the early access, and when it releases, it will be free. Now, the first thing I noticed was the game ran really good. It's pretty well optimized. I'm playing it on PC with an RTX 3060, and occasionally that card gives me issues with new games, so I was so pleased to boot it up. Resolution looked good, frame rate was in like the 90s the whole time, and it held really well the whole time. I've really had no issues in that regard. Also, these games with this top camera view are usually better on mouse and keyboard, right? But I love my controller. I'm a console nerd, even though I have a PC, but the control scheme for the controller is really good. It's very comfortable. The only thing that kind of lacks is when you're in the menus going through all your loot and gear. It's definitely easier with a mouse, and probably in general it's still meant for a mouse and keyboard, but it plays so well on controller. Anyone who uses a controller mainly, I think, will have a good time with this game. It also features crossplay, so you could download it on your PS5 or Xbox and play with your PC friends. Now, there's one little thing, because Sony has just been so lame recently, and microtransactions that you buy on your PlayStation have to stay there. If you buy microtransactions on PC and try to go to PlayStation, you'll have your account, but you will not be able to use your skins. So that is just weird. Sony obviously wanted a cut of the money. They gotta stop doing stuff like this, but it does feature crossplay and multiplayer in general, which is really fun. When I tested it out, it plays fantastically, and it even features couch co-op. You and your buddy could sit down with each other, and the second player could even use their account that they have themselves, and you guys just run around and play the game together. You can also trade items, and there's a stash if you're in a guild called the Guild Stash. So I'm in a guild with all my friends, and we could just go throw items we don't need in there, and that's really cool, and you'll get a lot of that because this game is heavy on character and class building. You're going to start off picking your Exile, which is one of 6 classes, which there's much more classes to come according to the developers. And I also heard that these devs are just really good in general with giving content, giving a lot of stuff, and not even showing it's really a free-to-play game aside from the skins. So there's a lot to unpack here. And when you pick your Exile, I chose a witch, for example. You're going to want to build them in the right way. So if I'm making a witch and trying to get intelligence and mana and all this stuff, and I find a gold great sword or super heavy armor, I'll put that in the guild stash for my homie who did a warrior build. So that part of it is really cool, and if you look at the skill tree here, it is enormous, but it's not a bunch of fluff. The upgrades actually feel significant, and you'll look at the end of the tree usually from the get-go, and you're like, I want to go that route. I'm basically doing minions, right? I want to end up at the very end where all my minions I'm summoning are just absolutely broken. And I even threw in some elemental stuff there, like I have an ice staff, and I put some gems into it that make freezing a lot easier, and you could even go and freeze bosses and stuff like that. So there's a lot to do here in terms of building your character. Path of Exile 2 for sure has a lot you're gonna have to learn, but if you played a lot of RPGs and action games, I think you'll be fine here. After a couple hours, I pretty much had the menus down. I understood where to put these gems and how to upgrade my gear and kind of how to build my character. Except one thing was really funny. My friend looked at it and was like, dude, you're a witch. You're not supposed to be doing all elemental stuff. And I just laughed because I thought I picked sorceress and I was like, oh my gosh. But it still worked because I was still putting points into intelligence. I was still getting a bunch of mana. And so you could kind of build your character in certain ways, but the main class aspect of it, you're going to want to kind of stick to that. Like you're not going to put a bunch of intelligence into a strength build character. And it's also a loot game, so every time you kill a boss or special enemies, or just in general, you're going to be looting treasure chests and finding good items. And if you get a gold item, it's like ding, ding, ding. And it's really easy to go back to the hub world and put everything into your stash so you don't just have a cluttered inventory. So that part never annoyed me. And I'm someone who gets annoyed by loot in games, especially Team Ninja games where you just have the same item over and over again. That drives me crazy. Here, it was actually pretty good. And every time I got a new item that was similar to something before, it at least had different substats, which you could look at and compare to your previous gear and choose what you want to do. And then you find a bunch of gems with a bunch of perks that you could input into your weapons or gear to give yourself different stats or buffs. And what's cool is these devs actually kept the servers up for the first Path of Exile because this game plays very differently according to my friends who have played this game a considerable amount of hours and played a bunch of the first Path of Exile. This game is very methodical and it takes a lot of strategizing while you're moving around. There's a reason people kind of compared it to like Dark Souls mixed with Diablo because it is kind of like that. There's a bunch of enemies on the field, you have a whole bunch of skills to use, but you have a dodge roll where you could dodge away from bosses with some decent iframes, and you're pretty much going to have to use the skills as smart as possible and move around your area in the right spots. Boss fights usually consist of movesets where they'll have a giant AoE or a line of fire and you got to dodge out of the way and then use the right skills, right? Like debuff them, then try to freeze them, and it goes into a really fun loop where almost your brain is locked in, right? You're doing this skill, then the next skill, and you have a certain order you want to do them to maximize your damage or just save yourself. And with that comes a good challenge to the game, and it's actually really well balanced. Like, I never felt like I was BS'd or anything like that. It was just hard sometimes because the bosses hit really hard or there's swarms of enemies, but there's always ways to deal with it. You'll resurrect at a resurrection point that's right next to where you just were, and you could try it again, and you still get XP every time you're killing these enemies. But the biggest aspect to this game that I'm loving so far is the amount of skills you can use and upgrade. Like, it's just insane, and you can really morph your character to how you want to fight. And when you're in battle, like I said, you have to think a lot, and using all the skills in the right orders are basically how you want to do it to get the most damage. It's just a lot of fun. You could go into a boss and use a certain staff and you're like, I know exactly what to do. Go back in your menu, put the right gem slots in, you go in and you're just doing insane damage, and it's really fun to kind of grind and build your character in this game. Environments also look really fantastic. Like I said, it's more of like a dark fantasy, and since the PC version ran so good, it looks beautiful most of the time. So it's always nice exploring these areas. One interesting thing is all these areas have named areas and they're the same, but if you wait too long and go back to them, it actually changes in layout. Some people may like that, some people may not. I think it's okay because it creates more exploration, and if you need to grind in a certain area, you go back there and all these enemies reset, but there's a little bit of different areas to explore. But the aesthetic and main points of the area, the main objectives, they're all still there. You also might be wondering about the story. Can I play this game if I did not play the first Path of Exile? And you definitely can. I am, and I'm not lost. It's the same world as the first game, but it's 20 years have passed and there's a new enemy called the Seed of Corruption. It's kind of this force that brings back old evil enemies and warlords, and you have to go and stop it. And I haven't gotten to a part yet where anything's been revealed, let's say, but I think there's like a driving force or person trying to harness this. So you have of Exile have to go around and kind of figure out what's going on. You're almost like rebuilding after an apocalypse, and you'll find a bunch of NPCs with their own quests. They're all voice acted, and it's actually pretty interesting to listen to the lore and figure out how this world came to be. And you kind of feel like a superhero at points, going out, building and getting stronger, and pretty much trying to save this area. It really feels like a full-fledged RPG on disc, and it is one of those games where you could play it for a very long time, right? It's early access. They're going to be adding more classes, more acts. At the moment, there is only 3 acts, and they're supposed to add 3 more soon. And there's an end game that apparently is incredible. A lot of people who are at the end game say there's a lot of content, a lot of fun grinding, a lot of fun bosses, and I have not gotten to there yet. A few of my friends have, but I'm still going through the main campaign, but I'm enjoying it plenty, and I definitely wanted to give some thoughts on this game to some who may try it. I would definitely say try to get a key unless you're really into the aesthetic and look at this game, then you could give the $30 for early access. If not, just wait for it to become free to play. But I've been having a fantastic time with Path of Exile 2, and it's kind of a little different experience for me. I said I didn't get into Diablo or any kind of game like this, but the dodging and methodical combat definitely feels a little bit from a Souls game, which I love Souls games, so it definitely scratched that itch. And then there's newness to it, right? All the skills and team building and kind of way you just wipe through hordes of enemies, but only if you play it correctly. That's a little bit different for me, so that's been a new avenue that I've been having a great time with. And overall, it's really immersive. That's one of the most important things for an RPG, right? You need to be immersed into the worlds, the characters, the combat, the class building, so they definitely nailed that. Again, my biggest complaint is just inherently the game is free to play and a live service game. I don't know how long I will go through it. I don't know if I'll be grinding the end game forever, you know what I mean? I'll definitely hop on and probably play with my friends once everything's all said and done, but it does bother me that this game is just not on a disc, right? It's not a full RPG that you could just go buy and you get 2 credits. It has an end game and it's going to keep going. There's going to be a lot of updates, but it's not one of those early access games where you get it and it's just not finished or anything. It actually ran better than a lot of other full released games on PC. So I was very pleased with that. And, I'm always down to give a live service game a try if it really does entice me. I just don't know if I'll play it for hours and hours on end. But if those things don't bother you, and you especially do like end games and live services that keep getting updates, keep getting more content, and you enjoy action RPGs, especially tougher ones, you should definitely try this out. I totally recommend it, and in general, I had a great time so far with Path of Exile 2, and I'll be playing more of it to come. I hope you guys enjoyed this early access review of Path of Exile 2. Let me know if you're playing it right now in the comments. Let me know if you're enjoying it. Do you have any issues with it? I know the devs are going out and balancing some of the loot. They're going to have better loot drops soon. They're going to edit the dodge roll a little bit so you don't get stuck in corners, because while enemies are supposed to kind of trap you sometimes, the dodge roll could kind of get you stuck very occasionally. So they're going to make it so you could slide through enemies, and they're going to do a lot of updates. But again, the game already has a lot of content, a lot of polish, and yeah, I think it's a pretty cool time, enough to make a video on it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again very soon in the next video. Peace.